How's it going, Song of Ice and Fire fans? Grant from Year Catch Miniatures bringing the next episode of our season changelog. And today we're tackling the rightful rulers of Westeros, I guess, the House Baratheon. And I'm joined by Southern Grand Tournament winner Joe McCarthy. How's it going, Joe?
It's going great, thank you, Grant. I'm very pleased to be here because about 2 years ago, when I first got into Song of Ice and Fire, I think it was around the time your channel started, and I distinctly remember painting my starter set and listening to your Renly Baratheon breakdown. So it's great to be here 2 years later.
That's awesome, mate. That's awesome. Obviously, you've had a great career, if you will, in tabletop wargame when it comes to Song of Ice and Fire. You're doing really well with Baratheons. Obviously, we've seen you running Targaryens lately as well, and even Brother Without Banners. You've even joined the Savages in the Forest.
Yeah. I think it's a great game. I think it's an absolutely fantastic game. And I'm very excited for it, and I'm excited to see what keeps coming down the line.
Yeah, 100%, mate. 100%. Okay, so we're going to jump into these changes then. I'll do it in a format I've been running in previously. And obviously, what I should say as well, it's great to have you on the channel. It's awesome that you like what we do, and it's even better to have you on here talking to us about House Baratheon. Um, so first and foremost, so I do these videos, I ask the guests a couple of questions around some of the changes across the broader spectrum of the game. So the main core rule book rules, if you will. So there's three main ones. The first being the lack now of access to neutral commanders. Do you think that this lack of access to like Roose, Dara, etc., is going to change the way Baratheons play? Do you feel like they were a big part of Baratheons as a faction, as a part of their identity, or do you think it's something that isn't going to affect Baratheons in any major way?
I I think not really. I mean, I think Baratheon are quite lucky in that they have seven, maybe even eight commanders that are, up there as fairly competitive. They don't really have they don't have a lot of sort of panic type commanders, perhaps just one really, or two maybe. So there's some people I know that would run Roos or maybe coming to Fargo, but we're quite spoilt really in terms of good commanders in Baratheon, so I think it's pretty negligible.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I don't remember seeing too many massive neutral commanders taking part in the Baratheon in a competitive level. Anyway, I think you're right. I think you've just got such a wealth of access to really cool commanders that pretty much you can tailor your list to adapt within reason to the way that you want to play the game. Okay. Cool. So the second change I want to talk about is now we have an auto pass and an auto fail panic test. Um, how do you feel about that? I mean, it's something we see in a lot of other game systems. They've now transferred it across to be in line with the armor save rolls. Do you think it makes a massive difference to some panic and morale tests?
Uh, I mean, the short answer is no. I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone have an over 12 morale test. Um, Obviously, there are stuff out there that get to two or start on two and get to two. Nothing in the Baratheon faction really ever gets to two. I would say. Um, I don't know, a 1 in 36 chance of something happening is pretty negligible, but you know, nothing to get excited about, I think.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And obviously, the most major change is now that we get 4 points to spend on attachments now, outside of the core 40 points that we get to spend on the army. This is obviously a drive to push people to take attachments to get those cool characters that we know from the TV show and the books into the game. Um, do you think that this is going to change the way that Baratheon builds are made? Do you think it's going to change the way that Baratheons will play their game now?
Um, I think I think that for Stannis' side, I think almost nothing will change. It's just better.
Hmm.
And I think for Renly side, it could have quite a big impact. Probably worse, but I think that's to be seen.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, let's get stuck into these changes then. So up on screen we have Andrew Estermont, both versions of him now, True Loyalist and First of the Kingsmen. The change that we see to Andrew, obviously, is the following. It's an adjustment to True Conviction. So whereas before it was only if you had more remaining ranks, or so if the enemy had more remaining ranks, it is now to the same or more remaining ranks. We're going to see this on a couple more attachments as well. It's obviously a Stannis faction thing, but how do you feel about this change to True Conviction?
Um, I mean, I think the true conviction change is probably the most impactful thing, potentially one of the most impactful things that's happening to Baratheon in this patch. You know, the fact it's usable on ranged units. This isn't Andrew specific, so I'm slightly going off piece, but
Yeah,
true conviction happening on same ranks, I think is really, really, really big.
yeah,
Um, you know, is it big for Andrew Estermont? Not really. It makes him slightly better, but he's not really. No one's really picking him anyway.
yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, so just you've alluded to it there. So let's go with next, which is Davos, Devan, and Bryen Thurrock, which is obviously the same change again. There's a little bit more as well. The obviously we do see the change to protection of the crown for Bryen, and also the change to Devan, which we were treated to in the Visions of the Flames, that showed us that now if your army contains Stannis, that you get Devan. For free, basically, as an attachment. So on top of the 4 new points that you're going to get attachments for, Devon will come for free. So obviously, do you want to talk to us a little bit about these? Obviously, you've alluded to the fact that perhaps Andrew isn't the
Yeah,
reason that you're using True Conviction. So these guys,
yeah. I mean, Davos is obviously the big one here. Anyone that's played Baratheon or played against Baratheon in the last 18 months or so is probably fairly familiar with Davos in Lightbringers.
yeah,
It's an absolute staple. Lightbringers almost always turned up with either Davos or Bronn.
mhm,
Clearly, they're not going to turn up with Bronn anymore. So they're going to be turning up with Davos.
yeah,
Rerolls on a ranged unit is really, really strong.
yeah,
It's one of the main ways to counter ranged is weaken tokens. And if you're getting back up to 7 hits rerolls before the weaken token, you basically eliminate the weaken token's value. You're back to you're back to a straight dice roll.
yeah,
Uh, on the melee units, it's clearly less impactful because you've got lots of other sorts of rerolls anyway, particularly with Kingsmen being so dominant in the in the kind of side list. But it's still good, frankly. It means you can ignore disorderly charges, lack of rerolls. You can charge over terrain. It's it's really, really strong, and now you're potentially looking at free free attachments on all your units.
mm,
Um, you know, almost any of these in any unit any time is not bad. Like, putting Bryen Farring in a unit of Lightbringers as if you're using Davos Commander or you want to bring 2 Lightbringers,
yeah,
you know, even if they hadn't made these guys free, I think you'd be considering rerolls on equal ranks for 1 point.
yeah,
Not even thinking about the other ability on there.
yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. You hit the nail on the head there. So that's how I felt when I saw the changes to True Conviction. Is that potentially I'm taking these regardless of the attachment changes. I mean, now we're looking at, there's quite a plethora of attachments with this True Conviction on there. So potentially your entire army can be having rerolls.
Mm,
It's quite nice to see. And obviously the change to protection of the crown as well. So whilst you control the crown, each time a unit is attacked, it may reroll your defense dice. And now we've got the added bonus that they cannot expend vulnerable tokens on this unit. This is something that I've just done a free folk breakdown as well, and that is on one of the. I think it's a rattle shirt card. I think is now added to it as well. So we're seeing more of this ability where you can't expend tokens, of vulnerable tokens specifically.
mm.
Do you think this gives Bryen a lot more value? And if so, where do you think you're going to be placing him?
I think the problem with this ability is that there's few other things. It's, it's very important for you to stop your opponent taking crowns on Stannis' side. But it's perhaps less important for you to control it. It's a nice to have on lots of cards, but the letters is probably always going to be your priority in terms of zones
Yeah,
of the 2 zones and crown cards. And there's not enough in the Stannis side. Well, there's not enough in the Baratheon deck generally. There's a bit of this in both sides, but you can't with the attachments in Baratheon that have a crown requirement are on opposite sides.
yeah,
You're unlikely to be spending a lot of resources to secure crowns.
yeah,
Um, So, it's a nice to have. I know I'd definitely be picking Bryen for his ability to give rerolls and range units. And there will be times where uh, the crown really kicks in, but it's hard. You wouldn't want to spend the resources to guarantee it, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's just a nice bonus when it comes up.
Okay. Cool. Um, Awesome. Okay, so let's go through to the next change. The next change is going to be Courtney Penrose. Obviously, we see him on the screen now. The change here is to Orders of the Crown, and there's also a little bit of back text as well. So, Courtney Penrose, Lord Tactician, now is reduced by a point if your army contains Renly Baratheon, and that's any Renly Baratheon, not just a specific version of him. Any version of Renly Baratheon allows you to bring Courtney Penrose, Lord Tactician, for 1 point. And obviously, with additional points now to spend on attachments, it could be a good choice, right? So we have Always the Crown. Now we have seen, Joe, I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've been involved in some of the discussions. A massive, massive cull on these extra attack actions. Assault order has been really diluted down. Might the Throne as well has been diluted down as a result of we can sort of make a like a that's what I'm looking for, like a educated guess that they're trying to just reduce the amount of damage dealing in the game to get you to round six, maybe to get the game played out in full. And also the crown is being caught by that stray bullet. So now this has changed to each time um, sorry, while your opponent does not control the crowns, each time this unit attacks, it gains +1 attack dice to melee attacks and counts as rolling a 6 for all charge distance dice. Um, I quite like it as an ability. In a world where they're taking away these extra attack actions, I quite like that it gives you a little bit of a buff. I don't know that it makes him a great choice. I think it's his other abilities, things like uh, counter plot and that sort of stuff, is what makes him worth taking as a commander, etc. But anyway, I'm going on. You talk to me about Courtney Penrose. What do you think?
I love Courtney Penrose. I love all versions of him. I actually love his command. I mean, I used his commander at the LGT for I think 6 of my 7 games, or at least 5 of them.
Yeah,
And I like the attachment before Crown and Scouts came along. I used to run Courtney Penrose attachment. I just think tactical repositioning in Baratheons is I think tactical repositioning is great anyway, but in Baratheons it's extra great. Um, what is the Crown? If this was just a new, if these sorry, Might of the Throne, the new ability where auto 6 on a charge +1 attack. If that was just a new ability that was being introduced on a new commander, you'd say, "Oh, that's fantastic! This is amazing! I love this."
yeah,
Um, the losing of the free attack or the free charge, I guess, more impactfully, it sort of tempers that a little bit because you know you used to be able to run Courtney Penrose in Stag Knights, for example, and you'd be able to give up your activation to issue commands on your ranged unit, still have the ability to charge later on with Orders of the Crown. But that is less attractive now, putting Courtney Commander in your elite unit. Having said that, Agnites with an 11-inch threat range and +1 attack die is still absolutely nothing to be sniffed at.
yeah,
So I think for me, Courtney Commander is still top tier Baratheon commanders. Probably still top tier Renly side. He's great. He's still great. Come on, his cards are great. His attachment's still great. It's just not quite as good as it was. Uh, And then on the attachment side, um, in some ways, it's possibly better, and certainly with the free attachment limits. I think reducing the attachment to 1 if you have Renly is nice. Um, Not even really needed, seeing how generous they are with the free attachments at the moment.
yeah,
Um, but there's so many units that get a lot more exciting with Might of the Throne. I know a lot of people are very excited about Sentinels. Getting a free 11-inch charge +1 attack dice on your Baratheon Sentinels. That enables them in a big way. Pikemen, an 11-inch charge with uh, up to 11 hits.
yeah.
That's pretty tasty.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think both these versions of Courtney are still really, really strong, and I think we'll be seeing a lot of them.
Awesome. Awesome. It's great. I mean, it's great to hear someone say, that they're going to be looking at running them in Highgarden and Pipeman, because Highgarden and Pipeman we don't see loads out on the tabletop. So it's great that they're getting something a little bit extra to give them a little bit of a pinch in a tight spot. Um, next up we have two changes. We have Axel Florent from Aqua Devotee and the Red Priestess, the Divine Sacrifices. The changes that we see here, so for Axel Florent, he just goes down a point. As we see a lot of 2-point attachments getting dropped down to 1 now. Fortunately for Axel, he doesn't lose any abilities for that 1 point, where a lot of other attachments have lost an ability for the 1 point, one of which we're going to see in a moment. The Red Priestess, however, I really like this change. I played against this today with a friend. It has now changed. It used to basically take a wound and get the tokens and stuff. You get up to 2 wounds to hit the tokens. It's now changed. So now it's changed to each time this unit performs a melee attack before rolling attack dice, it may suffer 1 wound. If it does, this attack gains +1 to hit, and the defender becomes panicked or vulnerable. Now it's not so good with ranged units anymore because it doesn't work on ranged, but as a melee ability, I really like this. I mean, our discussions I've been having today is around using Red Priestess in Sentinels to get them hitting on freeze, which I think would it makes them that little bit better. But as a Baratheon player, how do you feel these changes impact the Baratheons?
I mean, you know, Axel was never a bad attachment. His abilities are just a bit expensive, and it was very hard. It's always very hard to find a 2-point attachment.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Both the great thing and almost the problem about both of these is what they really do is they make Kingsmen even better. This is my opinion. First time I saw both of these, the first time I saw the Red Priestess and the ability to put Axel in a list now, I
Yeah,
just thought they're just making the best unit in Baratheons significantly better. Red Priestess now will let you fish for crit blows. You've got as
yeah,
much chance of doubling you're getting a double hit as losing a hit. So I think a lot of people will be thinking, well, I've hit, I don't know, 7 hits. Let's re-roll everything. If we can get that up, we might get lucky and push that up to 10 or 11.
yeah,
And then you get the vulnerable at the end of it. So Red Priestess makes Kingsman absolute bananas. Axel Florent, you've now added Vicious to King's Men, and even when they're down at 5 hits on last rank, maybe even doing the last checks, they're still going to be rolling 7 dice. Still got Vicious, -1 to your morale test. You know, there's a risk element because you might end up killing yourself. So I think if you're down to the last check, you're probably not re-rolling your twos or fishing for crits. Um, I just think both of these really make Kingsmen an absolute, they take them to the next level.
yeah,
And I wouldn't be surprised you know, if people aren't too worried about losing all their friends running triple Kingsmen lists with their commander Axel and Red Priestess because they're just great. Um, Red Priestess can also do a lot of work, as you say, in Sentinels and in Faithful. Actually, Faithful, you're saving yourself using a token to get the +1 to hit,
yeah,
or you're putting out a vulnerable. It just makes them a bit more reliable.
yeah,
So yeah, both great attachments, frankly.
yeah. Awesome. I mean, how'd you feel about it not being able to use Red Priestess in range units anymore? Does that make you sad, or is it not something you really did before?
Um, I have used them, and it's not bad, but in previous patches, you're always going to prefer Bronn and probably Davos, I
Yeah,
think. Um, so I think it was always probably your third choice anyway. If they'd made the changes to Bronn and not changed through conviction, I would be sad about the Red Priestess change, probably.
yeah. Okay, cool. Um, Next up, we have another couple of attachments. Obviously, Baratheons have got loads of attachment tweaks in this season update. So we have Robar Royce and Guyard Morrigan. Absolutely nothing changes other than the fact they go down by 1 point. This now means that all Rainbow Guard attachments are at 1 point. These are the only two-point attachments. I think I personally, looking at this just as a Song of Ice and Fire player rather than a Baratheon player, I think these are both really really good for 1 point. Um, Especially when you consider things like Guyard in things like Rose Knights to give them back Dauntless. And Robot Royce giving Reckless Strikes and Furious Charge, I think is really nice. Would you think of these two guys?
Yeah, they're nice attachments at one point. I think Renly's side has some list building problems that they need to overcome. I mean, from a kind of fluff perspective, it's going to be great to see these guys more often. I'm not sure I've ever seen these guys on the table.
Yeah,
Um, but I think there's some challenges in the Renly side list building around at the moment. We'll come to them in a minute, but I would say that the Thornwatch Sentinel probably overshadows both of these. Certainly, I would say it overshadows Giard the Green. The Sentinel has Dauntless and also has Pathfinder and Furious Charge. So, is Counter Strike better than better than Pathfinder and Furious Charge? Probably not.
mm,
Robar Royce has Furious Charge but doesn't have Dauntless or um, Pathfinder. Is Reckless Strikes better than Dauntless and Pathfinder? Yeah, maybe if you're something very specific you're trying to achieve, but generally speaking, I think the issue they've got is Thornwatch Sentinel overshadows these guys. And also, I think a lot of Renly players are going to be looking at, five combat units on the table. Um, and it's quite likely that one of those combat units is going to be the Rainbow Guard. Not
yeah,
necessarily, but just think in isolation, in a vacuum, brilliant, great 1 point attachments. I think in the ecosphere of what the Renly side now looks like, still think we're probably not going to see these guys. Maybe Robar occasionally, but not a lot.
yeah. Okay, cool. Well, let's get stuck into those in, because obviously, we've just alluded to them there. So we've got the Thornwatch Sentinel, the Pikeman Captain, and Loras Tyrell Kingsquire all see changes. Um, they're all 1 point now. Loris has lost precision for that drop in a point. Thornwatch Sentinel has gained Furious Charge as part of that, a part of his part of just his change. And the Pikeman Captain gets Leadership Follower, which is this unit gains +1 morale test rolls while in long range of the commander's unit. Now, just before we get stuck into this properly, what I really like is when we see new rules pop up, and this Leadership Follower, I really like this because it then gets your mind working as to where we might see this pop up in the future, and it shows us that the developers aren't worried about looking into new rules and to try and get to where they want to be with certain attachments. So I really like this. I think a lot of people are going to be sad about losing precision, but expert duelist for a point. Yeah, how do you feel about these three attachments?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Lorat is the quickest one to answer. I think in the context of point changes across the game, I'd love to have been in that meeting where they thought, actually, guys, precision and expert duelist is too much for 1 point, but show me those Blood Riders again. It's quite hard to understand maybe some of the decisions they've made.
Yeah,
But yeah, expert duelist for a point, you know, okay, it's not bad. You might take it in a few places. We're probably not going to see him a lot, even with precision. You probably wouldn't have seen him a lot, but certainly for people that want to get their characters on the table, I think in many ways, on the Renly side particularly, it's the fluff element that's the most exciting.
yeah,
You can put all these characters on the table and not feel bad about it now.
yeah,
They're not the best. You're probably not going to want to. You're not going to try and win the LGT with them. But you're at least not going to feel bad about bringing them all, you know, out on a Tuesday night at your local gaming club.
mm,
Um, Thornwatch Sentinel and Pikeman Captain, I think, are much more interesting in terms of their sort of um, impact on the game. Pikeman Captain was already decent, and you'd see him in places, particularly in the Thornwatch, actually.
yeah,
Um, but I think now you're going to see him probably a lot more in Loris Commander lists, because Loris Commander is good with one great card. It's yeah, what it's called, but the one that makes enemies um take hits when they attack you.
overgrowth.
Um, Overgrowth. Thank you.
Yeah,
But the issue, of course, with overgrowth is you've got to pass a morale test to make it stick. Um, and there's probably I think there's no sadder feeling as a Baratheon player than when you try and put overgrowth on one of your units and it fails. And it's like, well, that's the best card in the deck wasted.
yeah,
So, you know, if you're trying to get overgrowth on something like Pikeman, or Thornwatch, or frankly any of the the many 6-up morale units, I think you're going to want to look here before almost anything else, just because boldness and courage is just a solid ability. You've just improved your chance to get overgrowth to land. So I think we will be seeing a lot more pikeman captain, especially in forest lists.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and
For much sense, sorry.
go ahead, mate. Yeah, I was just was about to say just about the sort of Thornwatch Sentinel, but you crack on, mate. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Thornwatch Sentinel is just really, really solid now. Dauntless, Furious Charge, and Pathfinder. I mean, they're just three great abilities. They're consistent. They're just all good. At one
Yeah,
point, it's not flashy, but it's just really solid. And I think that there's a list out there which in a tournament format where you're choosing terrain, some people will give it some thought and they will turn up with stakes and 2 or 3 units with Thornwatch Sentinel in, maybe 2 Stag Knights, and their opponents will just not know what to do because there'll be stakes all over the middle of the pitch, and you can just ignore them with your Stag Knights.
yeah, yeah. It's good. It's a really good change. When I first see it, I knew it was going to be good. I mean, that Furious Charge, we seem to be seeing a lot more nowadays, but having that vulnerable token just really helps to punch through armor. And you say Stag Knight's charging over the top of stakes, dishing out a vulnerable token and clubbing you with a critical blow. That's going to suck. That's a bad day at work.
Strong, yeah, really strong.
Cool. Okay, well, that's all the attachments done. Then we're going to head on to the tactics cards now. So we have assault orders changed and the sustained assault changed. These aren't Baratheon specific cards. They're just cards that have been changed across the board for every faction that has access to them. Obviously, we mentioned before that Assault Orders has been just toned down because they're toning down extra attacks and extra attack abilities. So it's changed to this now. So basically, Assault Orders is now that you attack with your lowest attack die value. It's at this moment we've got to lament the fact that Stag Knights have now got a degrading profile rather than 888 like they used to have. And sustained assault has obviously changed as we have seen it across the board. So now if your unit began the turn engaged, you roll a high stat value and you get rerolls. If it's your commander's unit, the defender also becomes vulnerable. So yeah, some quite just quite broad changes there. Joe, do you think this affects Baratheons in a big way?
I mean, I think in the wider scheme of things, the assault orders change is a positive thing for Baratheon. You know, Andrew is, alongside as King of the Wall, probably one of the two, and maybe Justin Massey as well. Probably some of the commanders you see the least. No one's really excited by Andrew Estermont. No one's really playing him.
Mhm.
So the loss of assault orders doesn't really impact competitive Baratheon. Frankly, you know, seeing a less powerful Victarion and a less powerful Khal Drogo is probably something to welcome. Um, sustained assault thing. Sustained assault is a good card if you need it. The problem
Yeah,
is a lot of the time you don't need it. So rounds 1 and 2, you're almost certainly going to be ditching this
yeah,
early doors. Um, Now you get a chance to play it because there's a chance round 2. You're still going to ditch it round 1 immediately if you can. Round 2, there's a possibility that um, your commander is engaged when they attack. Still unlikely. Um, a vulnerable token's a vulnerable token.
mm,
Actually, saying that, it doesn't need to be engaged, does it? You just have to attack. So yeah, round 2, you charge in with your commander, or your commander attacks, and you can just put out a vulnerable token.
yeah,
Better than ditching it. So it's a good thing.
yeah, yeah. Cards you can play are always better than cards that you have to bin, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
okay, cool. Well, that is all the changes for House Baratheon. Um, what I like to do at the end of this, Joe, is just to talk to the guest and basically put out to them that one, how do you think season 6 is going to affect Baratheons in general?
Well, I think my hot take on it is that um, people will be playing either One True King, Rightful Heir, or Davos. So Davos Commander is the only commander in the Baratheon pantheon that can use up all the free attachments on a 4-3 and on a classic 4-3 list,
Hmm.
because you can stick another attachment in with Davos.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that 4-3 Baratheon Stannis side is still better. Um, a lot of people are getting quite sort of despondent in that they're struggling to spend all these 4-3 points,
Yeah.
and a lot of people are looking at sort of 5-2 lists.
Yeah.
But I think for me, if you'd said to me a year ago, look, you can have a 40-point list with no restrictions, or you can have a 41-point list, but you have to take 2 NCUs, I would have said, I'll take the 40-point list every single time.
Hmm.
I think people just need to get comfortable with the idea that you're not going to spend all 4 of those points, and it's fine. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
I think the Renly side is really, really problematic. You know, I think the biggest disappointment with this season for me is how um, I like the direction they're going, broadly speaking, in terms of getting more attachments in. It just feels a little careless with the way they've treated cavalry. So, you've got on one extreme, you've got Targaryens who have just, you know, Targaryen cavalry has gone from great to just absolutely insane. And then on the other extreme, you've got people like Renly or Boltons or Free Folk or whoever who now have to have that real feel bad moment of, well, if I want to bring cavalry, I can't use these free attachments they're giving me.
Yeah.
Uh, and on a 4-3 list, that's even more painful because it means you're probably leaving 2 um, attachments on the table. I think a lot of Renly players will move towards um, 5-3, which was always actually viable on Renly's side anyway, because they've got lots of good 5 and 6 point units. Um, but they will be dropping Riders of Highgarden and Crown and Scouts, which I think is really sad because Riders were one of the iconic units for Renly.
Yeah.
But I think if you compare to the few months ago, Screamers and Riders of Highgarden were sort of the same kind of power level. They did the same thing. Um, you know, it's broadly comparable. But now in this season, Screamers are effectively an 8 point unit, and Riders are still a 6 point unit. They cost
Yeah.
the same. The opportunity cost of taking Riders is really painful.
Hmm.
I think competitive Baratheon players have been moving towards Stannis more anyway. I know there's some diehard Renly fans out there, so I'll be careful what I say, and they do well.
Hmm.
Um, I think this is going to tip them over the edge. I think Renly is going to be really hard to make work this season.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Again, it'd be good to see how people adapt and change to the season 6 update. Pascal tends to play quite uh, staunchly Renly side Baratheon, so I think even he's tilting towards Stannis as well now. So yeah, it'd
So,
be
sorry,
interesting.
Grant. I was interrupting on one thing. There is one actually real silver lining with the Renly side, I suppose, which is Eldon Estermont. I don't. Eldon has a card which basically triggers when attachments die, either friendly or enemies. So it was his kind of junk card really, because it never came up. So he is probably the best Renly side commander. He works really well in heat activation lists because he really empowers 5 point units, 6 point units, and he's just got better. So there is a little bit of a silver lining for this season, but I think yeah, broadly speaking, it's all standards all day.
All Stannis all day. I'll take it. Awesome. And so the last question I'll ask you then before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Um, so I always ask people on these update log things that what outside. I mean, you've obviously answered it a little bit with Blood Riders, but what outside of Baratheons? What is one of the things that's made you go like, wow, I really didn't see that coming? You've already said Blood Riders, so you can't say Blood Riders again. But what other change has sort of made you really piqued your interest?
I, I'll say sort of one kind of slightly meta thing, and then one maybe about the units themselves. I
Yeah.
don't quite understand what the strategy is around attachments. I've got a theory that they have two. We've got two designers at Simon, and they were both set the task of make the people use more attachments. And one of them went away with sort of this, right? Let's have these factions get free attachments. The bastard boys, there's a free attachment. This take this commander, you get this free attachment. Take this entity, you get that free attachment. Quite a nuanced approach. And then the other designer said, just give everyone 4 free points.
Yeah.
And when they came together, rather than choosing one of those two options, they just said, yeah, we're doing both. It's sort of weird. I think it's very weird what they've done, and hopefully they'll finesse it over the next 12 months around how some of these things will work. I like the direction, but yeah, I definitely need some finessing.
Yeah.
In terms of what I've actually seen, um, yeah, I won't talk about the Blood Riders again. I think Greyjoy is going to be interesting this season.
Yeah.
I think Greyjoy is the faction that can make the most of the free attachments, and they have some interesting free attachments, and also the oppressiveness of Balon might ease up with the point increase. So I'm excited to see what comes out from Greyjoys. Um, I'm also quite excited to see what comes out from Stark because I'm not a Stark player. I played against them a lot, uh, and my sense is that um, it might finally break the back of the double Telly Cavalier dominance. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I, it might be sort of in the face of kind of what appears on the first surface to be quite a challenging patch for Starks. Something quite interesting might come out of it.
Yeah, I think so. I think I've had quite a few discussions with people. I think Starks are in a really good place with the attachment side of stuff. I think even to not to put ideas in people's heads, but even like to the point you can run 4 units Sadly Cavaliers, Winterfell Guardians, and it's crazy. But I definitely think there's other stuff in Starks, like the access to uh, these attachment points to release the dogs as well. So obviously in season 1.5 or game version 1.5, when we had all the dogs running around because they were free when you took the Stark children, we could be seeing more armies with more dogs again, which I'd be really excited because it's a really decent part of the fluff. And I agree completely on the Greyjoys. I think Greyjoys are the secret winners here with the attachment bonuses. Cool.
Uh,
Sweet. Okay. Well, that draws us to the end of the House Baratheon season 6 overview. Uh, Thanks so much for your time, Joe. Really appreciate having you on here. I hope this will be the first of many appearances on the channel. It's been really cool chatting with you. Yeah, and if people like the conversation, like what we're doing, please do like the video, share it with your friends. Even if they don't play the game, just make them watch it. Get the views up. Um, and please do, if you enjoy what we do as a channel, please do subscribe because it helps us push the analytics out a little bit further. So I will let you go back to enjoying the rest of your evening, Joe. Thank you so much for coming on board and chatting to me about House Baratheon, the
It's John.
channel.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, mate. You're welcome. Cheers for coming on.